Good morning, everyone, to all the dear Dharma brothers and sisters, and Tashitele to Garchen Rinpoche. Tashitele, welcome back again, and thank you so much for giving us the precious teachings. We have about 400 participants from all over the world right now, so we are all eager to receive the teachings from Rinpoche. Ina, if you can help us to tell this to Rinpoche, appreciate it.
Rinpoche, consultanda Rinpoche yanke, Garchen la in tapane, Garden chase, Tatin Boyoris, Shipsha, and Joe Yoreda Moga. Rinpoche says, thank you. Our minds are together and also we can see each other.
Thank you. We will now start by reciting together page 1 to page 7 of the Sadhana before Rinpoche starts the teachings. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in a state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merits of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of the happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. I beseech the great Vajradhara, Tilopa, Naropa, Marapa, Milarepa, Gampopa, Pakmukjupa, Lord Jiten Songkong, at the feet of the root guru, who possesses the 3 ways of kindness, and all the root gurus and spiritual masters of the lineage, the Yidams and Dharma protectors. May your marvelous blessings permeate my mind. You have realized the uncontrived self-aware Dhammakaya. Your unconditioned great love pervades all beings and realms. With your immeasurable enlightened activity, you guide those to be tamed according to their inclinations. I supplicate you, the son of the teachings of the absolute truth. The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Meru, the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, and the sun and moon. As the Buddha field, I offer it. May all sentient beings attain the happiness of the Buddha fields. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma, of the greater, lesser, and ordinary vehicles, in accordance with the understanding and in different mental capacities of sentient beings.
Everybody sangha, thank you. Everybody happy. Three Katan, three Musuta, Malar, Gogan, Shuari, the Maran Gogan and show don't come in Maran Gombam that Boja in some of the in Zabin or Tinani, Tati Logitani, there is also from Yankee chat. The reality is that Yamapadan Bandoja, the Milarepa performance and Yaruma Yashi also the Dalil performer Jamango, the Natal, Tamon, Javakamisel, Lojumango Yore, the Taji Setana, till Kashi Gimo Gesaya Yore, Kashi Ning Gesaya, Kashi Penny Yaboyore, Santa Gore, the Shiara, Tata Namija, the Yantu Chora Yore. The Yamichi Yataman Agasem or Busho or Edge.
So yesterday we began with a song that comes from the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa, and the reason for purpose of introducing you to these teachings is that the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa are now available throughout the world in Tibetan, English, and Chinese, and so on. And so I'm introducing you to these songs so that later you can read and learn more about these stories. And the story we discussed was about Bardabom. She was one of Milarepa's greatest disciples, and one of the disciples who has also attained the rainbow body. And you can read in Milarepa's 100,000 Songs the story of how they met. It's actually quite a long story, the story of Milarepa and Bardabom, of how they met. And there's some really funny stories also in there, in the context of Bardabom. And then there is some stories that make you really feel compassion. And then there is some very useful, very interesting parts and useful in terms of our practice. So what I'm introducing you to are just the essential points that we need in order to engage in practice, because we want to make good use of our time. So I'm just introducing you to these songs from a practical perspective.
Bakatan the painted of the Chibundo, Lady Jabimala Tonga Towers, Teta Todan Yamte Jibala in Chaco, just our Jones, in Chaco, the Yamijina, Chaco, the Tamit of the Assembly, the same year with Chang Harishason, the Priori. The same with the long so that Yamijim Tansi with that. 다대로 이렇게 이제당 남단 제버스한테 이제까지 semdiba de iye tere iye tere iye ma ki chaptar chi mor jara kogu sem iye de teni chap de chamar chap de yores ngasi semda da chap yore ngasi sem chap yorma sama ki nga cho de ko de da mangbo da ji mangbo de yore teni ro ro sim chi so cha nga de yore 대 달려만 뿜뿜으로 도도로 차대요. 달들을 가려야 돼. 그런 패겨서 패겨들. 다서 나오 냐마데 건 라종들이 패겨다는 세비 게임에 타서 도스는 도르들 달들 팔려 이렇게 토스는 빼래. 나오 냐마도 토스는 세비 다시 뭐 차도 찹 달들 이 참들 샘들 로디 주발 그래서 참 맞잡사 직장요 말이지. 소수를 지나들이 다다다 날서 남밤이 차거리 이런 샘다 남카니 주발이지. 남카 그 맞잡사요. 다다 남다 사지 가까이 상걸 말이지. 또 살지 사도도 말 또야 요래. 또 여기도 가리 팔 동만이 그 찹대요래. 랑코도 이제 꼬라자 니관을 동반이 참면 랑코도 코토고 말이 지금 잠시 됐다고 오 첩되는 이 세비 맞춰서 내가 드리잖아 첩지 다도 나오냐 와도 또스마 파디잖아 내 달들은 거 타마다를 이렇게 요배 They chop the narrow the hakori. That's a page of a company, the cemetery doctor. TikTok never now got a chap. Party chop that you under the ore or Yabaki chop that you more. Take a yet is 17 times every year. Same you, what day you are, simply to put my Saji 17 you are get the same day. The record of the woman, yet get lamb in Japanese. Yet get the same Lord over in Zabana, that Kabala logo of the Jakarta, Zabana logo would do to Take all some of the Lord, they get the Lord, take my your money. Make a man in a hundred rounds, no law in what young money. Lord, the game of Chipari, Lord, you didn't your money call. Me did a party or call. Make you my tail, woman tower, what did he tell at them or your just chop darcy body, they are already. Take one to the same narrow, long same narrow to call your age.
So yesterday I spoke about the pet. And so then the story here continues. So then she said to Milarepa, these kinds of pets are extremely wondrous. They demand swift and firm action, like a great king's battle trumpet or command. Through practicing this way, what kinds of manifestations have dawned for you? And so the kinds of manifestations dawning, what that refers to is the mind. Manifestations is here means what arises within the mind. And so she's asking him what has arisen, asking Milarepa what has arisen in the natural state of his mind. And so this is important for all the practitioners. When we introduce to the nature of the mind, then we are introduced to these aspects of the ground, the path, and the result in relation to the nature of the mind. The ground is the mind itself. That's the ground. And here it says, the uncontrived ground dawns as great all-pervasiveness. His mind, Milarepa's mind, is all-pervasive. And is our mind all-pervasive? Not at the moment, because we always think me, I, he's doing this, I'm doing that. There is so much self-clinging. All the sentient beings in the 6 realms of samsara, even the most smallest life form, have this sense of me and I. We all have that. And for as long as we have that grasping at an I and me, the mind is not pervasive or great and pervasive. At that time, the mind is like a bundled up solid thing, and that is not all pervasive. And so how we scatter or shatter this solid thing that is bundled up, yesterday we mentioned we do that by shouting a pet. So first there is this concept of me that's naturally there. And then when you shatter it with a pet, it becomes dispersed, just like a cloud in the sky. And then when all the clouds are gone and this concept of me is gone, then the mind truly becomes vast and all pervasive, just like light energy. And in this world, there is just one light energy actually. And that is just like the nature of the mind. In terms of the body, there seems to be an outer and an inner and in between, but the mind actually is all pervasive, just like space, everywhere. So people think that the sky or space and the earth, the ground, are separate, but actually they are not separate. For example, I can pick up a piece of earth and I can scatter it. I can scatter it because there's empty space. Or I can spin my prayer wheel because there's empty space. So the earth of the prayer wheel spins in the emptiness of space. And that shows that it's not just the sky up here and the ground down there, but there's space everywhere. And that's why there is the possibility of such movement. And that is true for anything really that exists in the natural environment in this world. So space is all pervasive. And when this concept of an I becomes shattered, then it is like being struck by lightning and it completely is gone. And then the mind abides vast like space. So that is this vast or great all-pervasiveness, consisting of these two terms, the vastness and all-pervasiveness. So the ground of mind of sentient beings is that same mind. So the basis, samsara, it's not just sentient beings actually, but it's everything. Samsara and nirvana, everything is grounded in this mind. In the Samantabhadra prayer, it says, there is a single ground, yet two paths and two fruitions. And this single ground is like light energy, like the energy that we use in this world to power various electrical devices such as phones and so on. Everything is done with electrical power. And then is there one or is there two more electrical powers? There is only one, and that is just like the mind. And the mind, which is like space or like light energy, is all pervasive, pervading the entire natural outer environment. And just like light energy, we cannot say that it is a solid existing thing because we cannot grasp it, but we also cannot say that it doesn't exist because it's always actually there. So that actually is the view of the middle way, the Madhyamaka. So here the term to understand is this all great all-pervasiveness or vast all-pervasiveness. That is the actual natural state of our mind.
다르들이 지금 또야와 멤버 ram지만 토수로 도도지 접통고주나 대만은 토수한테 참을 chấp nhận 거리데 대회는 진짜 또야 될 거리 잡달 많이 봐대 신기가 심리 강리 말을 다지니지 춘지가 말을 군다가 말을 이제 말을 세고 내록이 하마오로 다 세고 나와 좀 도도 차들이 디응아연 집바디 심도도의 남시디 미네니 다속자 차오티호 이제르미 드리무즈 루차 드리티 채월을 잡다 중아 드리 용도서 쳐도 진영가 되게 차오니 오 대차다들 마미나 따다다 대로들이 단디제 민소 다 콜라토 적용을 되게 대로들이 때 달구나 판 털고는 가르쳐 털고리 다 이비로 털어들이 라리 소디는 송바제데 조고상지 이비세는 총성 단지진 털어 탑들고 요리 들들이 이비로 털는 거요리 이비로 니만 자오리 단지진 차고 자오리 단지진 망털 받도 상기야 요 말이 단지진 토지들이 단 털소로 되게 들지 봐 단지진 메나 우리 세고 내로 갖고 두거리 배나 차로도 너도 이제 대처해지나 하고 두고 말이 도노리 대실 처리 처리 요리 차고는 들이 가서 가르들이 약도 가서 찾는 거리 대도 될 거야 볼리니 이제 시바지 다다다 샘들이 나이즈 봐 나오 냐마데 딱지 땅나 토야요 말이 더 열마이 시에를 특별 열마이 그인을 그 열만 통수 제를 그 열마이지 오나티 미소들은 내가 레벨 거요 가리들 따다다 만도나 이거 저기 빼놓고 중상 쪽에서 다시 아이지 봐세요 딱 아들 로버트 때문에 사실 공적 로버트 맞아 로버트도 콜레는 거요래 로버트를 집 파차지 살아들이 나오냐 봐도 이제 코가 저기요래 대회는 돈을 다시 털고를 책 따와지는 따사주 좀 모르겠어. 강리지 찹데 다 찹거나 잠보 주고 뭐라는 소리를 끊어 찹아 삼바 다도 없더니 샘도 찹도 삼바도 찹고 요래. 사실 그 토반이 재미있어서 요래. 어래 토마 동해를 주 동해 답이 가요. 나디니 성지. 나디만 홀로 주 동해를 돌면 더 뒤에 톡을 나디를 가야게 싶고 따사되게 싶고 그러지. 대회는 지금 인기지 다요 말 다지지 인요 말 새로 딱 했잖아. 대하고선 따사 쪽지는 것으로 이제 봐지 잡달지 뭐오 세부 내놓고서는 세부라시야 이게 잡대도 쓸지 이제 봐지 잡달지 뭐 샤서 이제 내놓고 그 잡라니 잡대요 이제 하고 그러면서
So we have to understand these terms of when the mind is vast and all pervasive and when it is not, and how it becomes all pervasive. This term, this greatness here also has this meaning of, the Tibetan implies something that is unfurling or unfolding, like spreading out. And it is spreading out naturally when that solid thing of a self becomes dispersed, and then the mind is like spreading out. So it is like a great all-pervasive, it is great all-pervasive and spreading out. And so what it is that causes the mind to not spread out and be all pervasive, the mind of sentient beings, is ignorance, the dualistic perception of self and other. The two kinds of ignorance, the innate ignorance and the imputed ignorance. And due to ignorance, sentient beings do not understand the true nature of the mind, and this is what causes them to become bundled up into this solid thing. And that has to ripen. The consciousness has to mature. And so gradually sentient beings mature from being a very subtle life form into a mental body, and then more coarse physical form, and then sometimes appearing as large as a mountain, sometimes as small as a mustard seed or a water particle. And when you observe all of that, you realize this is because they are unripened. And this is because of self-grasping. This is what creates these manifestations of samsara. So in order for them to spread out or disperse, what is necessary? We need to cultivate an altruistic mind. In the 37 Bodhisattva Practices, it says, the perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. So we need a method to disperse, destroy self-grasping. And the method is the altruistic mind, which is like the sun. And self-grasping is like ice. And until self-grasping is shattered, we cannot attain enlightenment. When self-grasping becomes shattered, when there is no more self, then you realize the true nature of your mind. So now when we tell someone this block of ice is actually water, it is difficult to understand because it acts like a rock, like a stone. But then when it melts, it becomes all pervasive, it spreads out and it merges with the ocean and so forth. So this is how we can understand it. So the ground here is the natural state of the mind, and that which ties it up is the grasping at a me, a self. And that you should look into, this concept of me. Actually, you cannot find it. It is not an object of sight. You cannot see it anywhere. It is not an object that can be even spoken of. It cannot be, it is not something, an object, a conceptual object. And it is not even a thought within the mind. So it doesn't actually exist. And even though it doesn't actually exist, it still comes, it still arises. So, for example, it happens naturally all the time, and you're just a little bit afraid. There it is again, this I, this me. It arises momentarily, instantly. And it arises constantly because of deep imprint, habitual grasping at me. And this is what has created samsara. So in order to destroy it, the root of all these words really is we need bodhicitta. And how does it then become pervasive? It is said in the prayer for excellent conduct, it is the power of love that is all pervasive. So that is the power that makes the mind pervasive. The pervasiveness is actually love. And that is also why the Buddha in the beginning taught immeasurable love. That's most important. Because people think, why am I suffering? It's because you grasp at a self. And for as long as you do not become liberated from self-grasping, you will not be liberated from suffering. There will always be suffering. So then what can I do to destroy self-grasping? You need to cultivate an altruistic mind. You can really see how it happens, how it works by looking at your mind. When you're thinking about others, you're not thinking about yourself. And when you're thinking about yourself, you're not thinking about others. It's just like that. So therefore here it says, the uncontrived ground dawns as great all-pervasiveness. So what we need to understand here is that it is bodhicitta that makes the mind pervasive. And this ground here is speaking about the natural state of the mind that all beings possess. So we possess this uncontrived ground. It is our natural state. Actually, our natural state is this all-pervasive state, but we have not realized that.
그 동하고 다시 냠니지 람지 람 막지 상사를 제모셔야지 다 냠니 제በ까지 샘비 내로 하고 그들이 다다 샘콘 상탈이 다다 상탈 말이지 오 다스랑 톡고 설고스를 놓고도 오 다를 놓고 요면 샘데 루게 토요 드네크토 드니다랑 그세 년콜로 강남 잡아요가 데크들이 담들이 잡아 먹고 담대요리 드리텔이 동문이 지르더니 점점 니가 좀 생광들이 생광을 아기지 잡되면 빼는데 맥점대로 강화도 생광 맞으나 생광 잡을 가서 갈 랑이 찾아 가를 지는데 뭐도 상탈들 데이터들이 느끼 담지 고고당 치마를 맞아봐 생kor을 아시지 얘네들이 이제 까트고 요말이 강력조 상탈치 보자 되는 느끼 세 무고당 치마 난 종지가 남도 차당 또 바탕지 다 라기 쳐다랍게 찾아 대탐지 뜻도 마음에도 고소도 상탈되는 그런 노밤에 받대 드마다서 야통다 주마 쳐다 자송 섬선 주마시 바데 철랑도 나왔다 그래 자송 따라해서 빼줘고 요래 마베트리 데이터들이 말한다 주마다 something is a pay. There's some target subject doctor, they Yason Zong you are better. Some touch of Charles. So, Yami, the land the Carib. Not to you what Carib with the Tobabi was shut to go. There's some dump to go on. There's some target. Yami can go where the children say, oh, I get some target. Casacality. 적자 빠르는 때에나 조야요 말해서 말하래. 이제 막 람막지 상태를 제대로 살았어.
So here, this verse speaks about three kinds of uncontrivances, or three unaltered states. And there is the uncontrivance of the ground, the path, and the fruition. Now, being uncontrived or unaltered means that the primordial natural state of the mind that does not grasp at any thought or anything whatsoever, that is the uncontrived, unaltered state of the mind. It is a natural quality of the mind. So when one does not analyze and think in terms of existence or non-existence, one doesn't grasp at anything whatsoever, the mind becomes naturally pervasive. And that is the uncontrived nature. And now that was the ground. And then for the path is how that is put into practice. And it says the uncontrived path dawns as the great unimpededness. And so here we need to understand how to practice the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is unimpeded, all penetrating. So now it seems to us that from our perspective, things are not unimpeded, not unobstructed. For example, if I want to go outside, I have to go through the door. Otherwise, there's obstruction. There's physical obstruction and impediment. But that is because we grasp things a certain way. We grasp at such solid substance. And this is what causes the mind to become bundled up into this solid entity. It is all this grasping that causes that. So when there is no grasping at anything whatsoever, when there is no grasping at a subject or object, then the mind is naturally all penetrating or all unimpeded, all pervasive. For example, when you're sitting in a room meditating and close your eyes and do not think about the building, the structure which surrounds you, and you don't think about that, then the mind does become all pervasive. It can pervade the entire world, or whatever you think of, this is where the mind pervades. This is the unimpeded nature of the mind that is realized when there is no fixation at any concrete existence with regard to the outer universe and all sentient beings. So when that is realized, one realizes this unstoppable or unceasing nature of the mind that is all pervasive or unimpeded. So the uncontrived path dawns as the great unimpededness. So things are impeded to us because there is grasping at the concrete existence of the outer world. We think that things truly exist. And then on the inner level of the mind, there is grasping at the thoughts of attachment and aversion and so on. So if one lets go of all such fixation and lets things arise just naturally, like waves on water, they will just arise naturally without affecting one negatively in any way. And so this is how the mind remains in the unimpeded state. And then from within that state, things appear as illusory. Mind is like an illusion, or like waves on water, or like rainbows in the sky. Also, often this is how it is explained in the tantric teachings, or also like a dream. So when there is no grasping in the mind at all, then the mind becomes all pervasive and unimpeded. So then from a practical perspective, now how you practice this is that when you look at your mind And whatever thought and afflictive emotion arises, if you allow it to arise unobstructedly and it is shattered unobstructedly, it just dissolves naturally. So when that is accomplished, then nothing can obscure the mind, nothing can affect the mind. Then the mind is experienced in your own practice as this unimpeded openness that is all pervasive. And that is in general also the true natural state of the mind, this unimpeded openness. So that's the ground, and the path is how we practice to realize that. So here Milarepa then says, so the uncontrived path dawns as great unimpededness. There is nothing that can stand in its way. It is all penetrating.
This Untitled Chapter, the Milarepa Congress, Chini Domba, Trachile, Zikalutri, Sangtar Sangmatalitri, Rang, Luze Japaris, Yusala Yodis, Mizal Medias, Bella, Data, Tomani Shiratri, Tara Toke, Milarepa Pandos, and Tomis, or Karisama, the Seven Pacha, and the Toke, Tomidri. Rang seven de Bahakusona, Toke Tommy, Toke, Napoli, Jobaka, the army, that of Milarepa, Zumcherton, the Zumcherman, simply they looked at our seven presidents of your spinner, that of some Namtana, Tajante, or Essie.
As well, at another time when Milarepa was asked a question about, again, from a philosopher about they were speaking about the question of what is unimpededness or obstruction and non-obstruction, being unobstructed. And so also Milarepa wanted to show that it is obstruction or unobstruction is just a mental concept that we create. So it is an intellectual concept. So if you think it is there, it is there. If you think it is not there, it is not there. That is emptiness. So when they were speaking about unobstructedness and walking through the rocks, Milarepa was able to walk through the rocks. And whatever you think of, it can become that, or not walk through the rocks, or fly in the sky and perform various miracles. So it is all a creation of the mind. So actually it is all how we see it in the mind. And it is not in that sense a so-called miracle, but it is the quality of the mind. So I encourage you also to read that in the life stories.
Dewa mabdi saja chebor sharsum. Kete tabi ye tambo ye ne lokto. Tini lam nyam chalen de tini sem zaba meba lam nyam chalen sem zaba meba de sem santar cha. Tini dewa mabdi saja chebor de tini sem ne lok ne de tini ha ko yore. Tini saja chebor shiba de kamri tini sachi kangam ne song mo chek de ba de. Ne lok de jeyang me sem lab de chula de sem kang ne lok sam lok kang ma de sem kang ne lok tipo de de no. Ramji tari nakwa tawe chapde kola chapde pati Ramji chade yore tera lapsang semko nelu Ramji tegara re so tera teri Dewa mabdi saja chebo shara teri saja chebo shiwa de kare re tere o tongpa tongchang kanya mewa ja chebo nakwa tawe re tongpa ja chebo semdi ja chebo nakwa tawe re so tera ja chebo oh, 이나 또 봐도 강야 매발이 대 말이 야니 호르트반데 말에 동부 이시 살도 동부 이시 뭐이송 야는 호르트 봐 좋아해서 동반이 임발한 나는 이시요 그래서 이시가래 동반이도 세면들 세우고는 아시지 나가 동반하고 차요 거래 어디 집이 시바싸고 어디 싹동소 욕하가 많이 올라 이게 요래 오 동반이 이 말에 이시야요 봐 그랬더니 산도 동부지 지금 뭐이 송 야는 코로도 봐 좋아한데 저 지도시 있으면 딱 코가 그니 말이더니 Corsa Cordi Yomari, Semquala, Nelura, Napata, Tina Paula, the Hakor, there is some Jedo, Mepa my Yoba my Tini Tata, Gestina Paula, the woman is Dawati, this is the Tile, Sadati Pamo Yore, Namisa Lagu, Jowachi Mozi, Trisada Chimozi, Tini Long Dr. Pata Chapter, the Womachi Mozo, Tetri, don't much of a mention of one child. Didn't ever decide that you must also.
And then the uncontrived fruition dawns as the great seal, Mahamudra. Now when we realize this one ground, the nature of the mind, through the path, then as a result, Mahamudra is realized. So when on the path, the mind remains free of grasping, then the mind becomes unimpeded. And as a result of becoming unimpeded, one realizes the nature of Mahamudra, which is to realize the true nature of the mind. What is actually Mahamudra? In the Ganges Mahamudra, it says, in brief, without a single thought, look decisively at the ultimate meaning. Look at the nature of the mind without having a single thought, without thinking. Just look at the bare nature of the mind. And it will naturally become all pervasive like space. And it becomes so momentarily. You look at the mind and you see its nature is like space. And so Mahamudra is then, it is explained that for the Great Seal, it is great because it is vast, like empty space. It is the wisdom of the empty space. That is great from the Great Seal. And then it is empty, but is it nothing? It is not nothing. There is also clarity. There is a clear awareness that is aware of its empty essence. And the seal means that there is, it seals all phenomena of samsara and nirvana, or it releases the knot of samsara or the entanglement of samsara and nirvana. So it is this primordial wisdom of emptiness. It is empty, naturally empty, pervasive like space, and it is also clear knowing. And emptiness and clarity are not separate. That is the natural state of the mind. So when one realizes this clear and empty awareness, then one realizes the nature of samsara. One realizes non-duality. There is then no more dualistic perception of someone who wanders in cyclic existence and a cyclic existence to wander in. That happens when one realizes the space-like nature of the mind. That is the state of Buddhahood. And this state is neither something that exists, nor is it something that doesn't exist. It is realized, for example, through the scriptural authorities, through the middle way, the Madhyamaka, or according to the practice lineage of blessings, through the practices of Mahamudra or Dzogchen. So in these three ways, the view is ascertained, but it is not three views. It is one single nature. It is like one person having three different names. So the uncontrived fruition dawns as the Great Seal, Mahamudra.
다지 님도 그때 하고 때 동안이 제거요래 다지 님이라테 레사다사디 잡히네 드리다 요말이 빌라 다지 님이 저는 레사 아무 요말 레사는 드리고다 레 Stopati, Sabdi, Nimi, Lega Mari. Nidila, the Chadang Niso, Chadang Nisele Somitri, Dale, Sabata, in a couple of gave us all 3 times. Dandy than you mounted in Megay so, delayed Bachat, the Bachat, Young, the child, tell Kovachar. 你梦中的了，但主要是弄起来，后来是把你梦中，主要是中国人，主要是就是你梦中的没到从到明年，你后来差有嘞，也是大家结果的还好弄成了，就是现在大家你们那边没平时你呢，哦，那你身体不嘞，身体不嘞，这边了，呀，你梦上去吧，介绍什么，介绍哦那个。Jumatavris, Jumatavrimato, the Jibet, 7 email, men Koto Langsay or Maripena, or Koto Loveraging Lang utility, Numa, but they shut up like the ship for ship to Kuriori. Da ye need the Mineri, some teacher, Tabacha, desire, Tabacha, the Coatri Tony, the Joe Sajati Biton Hakon, Koro the Patrol, the Core Tadore, so. Core Tashiba don't put it. This Sajati was dying with Chiboyama. This will be already. This Sajin, they said, son that don't be seen more on the or some Taji in Megala, the Tomai, some Namatavella, or 这些新品18烧我这有嘞，这18烧我这来打印一枚吧，这差的，这下可能这你把它做，但是大家就没把它这这。
So Mahamudra means that one becomes released from the entanglement or the bondage of samsara. One becomes liberated from this bondage when one realizes the nature, first the empty nature of the mind. And empty here means that one realizes that self and other do not actually exist separately. So that when one realizes that is this emptiness, one realizes the empty nature of the mind. And so when there is no duality of self and other, then there's also no duality of someone accumulating karma and karma accumulated. When there is no concept of self and other, there is no accumulation of karma, and because there is nothing to be done and no one who is doing it. We, on the other hand, grasping at a duality of self and other, develop thoughts of attachment and aversion, and that is what creates karma. And sometimes due to thoughts of love and compassion, we create virtuous karma. And then with self-grasping and the afflictions, we create non-virtuous karma. And then these karmas put an imprint into the mind, which these imprints then continue to manifest over and over again in the form of samsara. So it is the 6 afflictive emotions that create the 6 realms of samsara. The 6 afflictive emotions are just like the seed of a flower that cause the 6 realms of samsara to ripen and then manifest. When one realizes the nature of Mahamudra, one realizes that self and other do not actually exist. So when you realize that and you are with another person, for example, you know that the two of us, we have one and the same mind. And when you realize that, ordinary, unrestrained afflictive emotions can no longer arise. And even if a momentary affliction arises, you will instantly understand that this is just temporary, a temporary illusion. And because you know that self and other do not exist separately, there is no real object of anger. So even if anger momentarily arises, it instantly dissipates again, just like a wave on water. If you believe in the true solid existence of self and other, then you really get angry, for example. If you believe in this true existence, then those karmic imprints have a place to stay. And then when they stay there and they are reinforced, that creates samsara. So in the Mahamudra, it says the meaning of the Mahamudra is this release of the entanglement of samsara, these knots. It means to become free from samsara. Also, in an explanation on Mahamudra, it says that this, that in Tibetan it's Chakya Tempo, and so Chak also refers to the recognition of empty primordial awareness or wisdom, and realizing that this empty wisdom is without self and other and vast like space. So that is the etymological meaning of Mahamudra or Chakya Tempo. So there is this empty space, but there also is clear awareness. And within clear awareness, there is no duality of self and other. So when one realizes that, one will come to know the great power of this realization of Mahamudra.
Dewa Sangha, Tato Dewa the Sangha Shivadilla, Tondaba Dema Tawatilla Sangha, Sangha Karishi, Dewa Sangha, Sem Korangi, Jerry Sanji Bala, Sanji Shivali, Daji Niveva, Nidimeva, Iveva, Nisameva, Tavatum, the Milarepa somebody, Dewa Sangha Shivadilla, Tritera, Trimalaripa Song, Sotar Mina, Young Med, Sansen Mina, Godum Med. Sangha me ngotu be sangha ga de sim de ju sim saje ro ngotu wa de lang sangha de lang sim saje ro ngotu ko yo re de ta ji lang de sam de ka sa ka de ki yo re ni to ni na me ta de de lang go yo re de.
So the root of all practice really are these three: the ground, the path, and the fruition. And if we apply these three to the three levels of the path, then the ground is the pratimoksha or individual liberation. And here it is taught that one needs to have renunciation. Then the path is bodhicitta, which is the antidote to self-grasping. So if the bodhicitta is not present, then self-grasping cannot be destroyed. So the mind must be infused with bodhicitta as the path. And the result is the secret mantra, which means to see the ultimate truth. The result, secret mantra, means to see that one's true nature, the ground of one's own mind, the fundamental nature of one's own mind is Buddha. And within this nature, there is no duality of self and other. Milarepa also said that the ultimate view is that of non-duality. So the result is the secret mantra. Milarepa also said, without pratimoksha, there is no renunciation. Without the Bodhisattva path, there is no benefit for others. And without the secret mantra, there is no introduction. And that refers to the introduction or the recognition to the fact that the nature of one's own mind is Buddha. That is what one is introduced to. And so there's many commentaries generally on the ground, the path, and the fruition. But here it is explained that these 3 points here really represent the essential point of practice. And then the next story, then Pardabum said These manifestations are like when the sun is shining in a cloud-free sky. Everything is illuminated and clear. They are extremely wondrous. In practicing with such dawning manifestations, what kind of confidence have you attained? So now Bom is asking Milarepa, what kind of confidence have you attained?
Oh, then Slami Jimmy Tavadens. Tata Sande Yoris, Sande Karika Sumet in the Pena, Rana Daji, Nidinity, Chadam Mo, some of the Lesawa Tamchi, the three, Pinsinuala, Tando Bayonguyore, Chedan Data Dongayonguyore, Chetumang is Honga Nawan Chayonguyore, their Jesse Yoris. Flash about the young son, took several hands. Dewa territory, Petrina, Negap the and Torget Dewa, Tato Santi, Common Glass of Battery, Sancho Semper, Dewa the Yunguris. There David just come territory, Devati, Flati, the way just come here and Jeti, two related same ticketsy, Petri, give out them, give Semratini, Dewa the Tomatis only. Jiang, Mama can do it at a shadow. There is a lot of dead mind of yours. They don't read the flat, dear Kakari or Maris. Shadi, you are the human body, more machine is. This of the human with all yours. Flat of your side of was all yours. Flash of the flat, day, you got it, and you have this one. You are your Maris. Flat is dirty, your man, dead is inky, your Marie. Oh, Santok Sem, Tony Ninja song the job of cemetery, some jade, flat day, when it's our Kakamaris, neck up lower charity, triple now on a Mubo downtown and Genie, it is in Junguyore, Tell Mubo and Siman Genie, treated a young giant, the lay Sakiore, the vanity, Kong nature, flat Kakari Omaris, Jason Gorota Newman, what there is. G. Tamji was our daddies. Daddy, she was da maple a tat on your rescue. Da maple a daz on a carry. Da cardo. Read the dark marriage, seven dark, seven dark cardo, 7 years such a human tongue. Da ye or married, they have was oh, 3,000 Lami Jimmy David. That's a reason.
And so then he said, first, being free of devas and ghosts is my confidence in view. And so we speak about gods and demons. And actually, where do they come from? They come ultimately really from our own dualistic perception of self and other. And then due to that perception, our own accumulation of karma driven by attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And then due to the karmic ripening of that, there is an experience of harm, like harm by something demonic. In this life, we experience illness and suffering. In future lives, the manifestations, the appearances of the lower realms manifest. And that is what we call demonic or a demon. A god is, Deva, is the nature of bodhicitta. It is anything that brings the temporary result of happiness and the ultimate result of enlightenment. So all these forms of happiness are a quality of bodhicitta. So the cause of happiness, anything that causes happiness, we can call it a deva or a god. And anything that causes suffering is a demon. But actually, it is the functioning of one single mind. It happens in one single mind. It is because we have created virtuous and non-virtuous karma that we experience both happiness and suffering. Now the results become manifest. So actually, God and demon are just labels. We just call them that. But in reality, there are no separate gods and demons. If we do not recognize our own afflictive emotions, then that is a demon. That a demon is created by afflictive emotions, and a god is created by bodhicitta. But really, ultimately, they are not two separate beings. They are the qualities that can arise from within a single mind. So there is no separate god here. For example, I myself am the god, and the other is someone else, is a demon. It's not like that. It is a quality of one mind. Quality of bodhicitta is that one realizes the union of emptiness and compassion, and that the mind is actually Buddha. And then one sees that actually there is no difference between gods and demon on the ultimate level. It just temporarily, momentarily, due to our confused perception of mind, being hold things to possess a true existence, a true concrete existence. And because we believe in the true existence of appearances, we again and again accumulate karma, which causes this illusion of separation that doesn't actually exist. So if you want to find a demon, it's the afflictive emotions. And ultimately, the root of all demons is really self-grasping. And the self is something that you believe exists, but that doesn't actually exist. Because where is the self? The body is not you, it's not the self. So then the self is the mind. But where in the mind is the self? When what you realize Mahamudra, when you see the nature of the mind, you realize that there is no self and no other in the mind. So that's the confidence that Milarepa has gained. Being free of devas and ghosts is my confidence in view.
Sena, Shedang, Chado, Josheda, Chado, Glesa, Yabati, Jevati, Seminar Yori, Sakwa, Lady, Paropo, now the Paropo, Daji Yomari, Ragshala, Satavadi, Chadi Yori, Lesa Wakani, Lee Mimbakani, the Lesa, Yapati City Yakama, Lesa Yari, Sam King in Yuma was Semipola Yori, Tata Sosola. Certainly, that also run a pena Pajoka Kang Chebo to Sona. Oh, Sela Yoda, you is body. Tell it in Mabziba, Ramji, the cook, Yiba, wouldn't go to body, place it. Oh, just scenarios what is. Oh, don't talk so lots of water getting Shedan lady. Shedan that you knew what the Rangular to the Yoda, who is body. There is you bodies, they need rugby flying over the sun, just have to rugby flat, Dante the human really something. They didn't take continuity, Dante the human whatever coming, three days she up the new jacket, three top the thing, 300 human bandana. 3 days of Tokyo, you can touch it, they're going to throw him with the leg, Pacha, Mina. Just in the get to your money. Truly, me, but let me by Pacha, you know. That say, Gino, or call Gammas on Quinto Tongo Yore, Quinto Tongo Shigore, Tangan, Tatang, no but something. Didn't trip a symbol every Julian, the destiny. Don't get them to board, driven as Hata Dongs or took only more to Yapo, Tito Samotone, Tota Seka, the Rangler, Kogo Yore, letting human with a bab gore. Don't let them say human with say, but don't date the Kakayo, my you dragon is a curry, the daddies and human were rich, daddy is, get our half house. Oh, daddy is a joke, you get up something. That's a large dick, oh, data was the quality that. 经常特色搞的大堂节必须出主意。 똑같이 좀 뭐지 그 요래 또 함이 되면 감이 되고 그런 약고 요래지.
So regarding these gods and demons, there's actually it is very prevalent in the East. It happens a lot in Eastern countries that people come and say, somebody's casting a spell on me, somebody's cursing me, or there is an evil spirit that has entered my body and is possessing me, and so on. So people say these kind of things. And so this is a good point here to understand these kind of questions that arise. So the actual true demon is the greatest demon of all demons, is one's own self-grasping. And the cause for whatever manifests has been created by oneself in a previous life. So the cause are one's own negative karmas and obscurations within one's own mind. The afflictive emotions, stinginess, hatred, jealousy, especially hatred and jealousy. So one has created karma with such a state of mind, and this is the result that then manifests. And so the karma has been created by one's own mind, and what manifests to you as the perceived harm is actually also your own mind, because there are no self and other. Whatever you accumulate or kind of put out there is reflected back to you as your self projection. So that is when we accumulate karma, and when that karma then ripens, then the one that has created this karma long ago is still there in the mind. The afflictive emotion is still present. So look at that state of mind. For example, if one experiences financial difficulties, then one will have this tendency, for example, to naturally to feel very stingy. And then one naturally does things like stealing and so on from others. So all of these tendencies are present within us. So the cause was our own stinginess, the afflictive emotion. Or when the cause was hatred and anger, then the result is abuse, illness, having one's life taken, and so on. But the afflictive emotions that have caused all of that are present within the mind. So therefore, the true only demon are the afflictive emotions. And the Dewa, or the God, in essence is bodhicitta. The essence of the demon is self-grasping, the afflictive emotions. And when self-grasping and afflictive emotions arise, they must be subdued with skillful means, with wisdom and with compassion. So then you will understand when you feel that other people are like kind of playing black magic and cursing you and so on. Actually, if you would not have created the karma and the imprint for that to happen in the past, then even 100 curses could not affect you in any way at all. But if you have created karma and imprints for that to happen, then the condition of a spellcaster arises, and then you might feel, oh, he doesn't like me and he knows black magic, so he's casting spells on me. And that is really completely wrong. That is utter confusion. The other person hasn't done anything, actually. The other person is just a condition. The cause is your own karma and obscurations. So this is actually how we are introduced to it in the truth teachings. The cause are one's own negative karmas and obscurations. The conditions are the hindrances, evil spirits, and obstructors, and the result is suffering and illness. So it is all the karma of that oneself has created, what we call this so-called sorcery and black magic and so on. It all comes always back to our own afflictive emotions, our own self-grasping. So aside from that, there is no other demon really. It is really the only demon that really exists is one's own self-grasping. And so when you realize that, then you seal self-grasping with bodhicitta, and then you see no separation between gods and demons. So this is maybe a relevant instruction at this point here of the teachings, because it does happen nowadays a lot that people have a lot of suspicions toward each other, thinking that someone is casting a spell and so on. So if you think that, then this is a very important point to understand.
Nyumba saunga de sebi yula yona this zo go ta go de madara tri te tala tri change ko ma tabso go yore bena ne nata da donge tabje ge tri lag de kwa pron su ko yore ni yin de to oni de la ta control ti ya cha le sa ko yore te rang le chang song sa do donge tabje donge de de sa ching ni song ta ta dang to da blen donge che bo yore 참아 디동에 되게다 수제도 유모의 제송 다지의 제송 레소소 사송 다지도까지 상가요 다 동네 강에 됐다고들이 수학과들이 물을 못 전달들이 다다 동네용나 들이 하자 고치 못 주고 요래 미송스로 잡타만 되고 되고서 요나야 들이 다다 물을 뭐 나와서 이제 좀더 미송도의 대교 장고 나와서 좀조 변을 프로치보도거나 세트에서 제절을 되게 프로소로요리 저는 나타다 동네들이 사족서 받답지가 용티는 저거요리 그러면서 거기 집에다 동네 주도고요 말이지 얘는 주 맞습니다 다들 폐기요 선은 동네에 체크하다 매반도거리 너가 챕터 가래 얘는 그 레사고요 선 레세바 보더란 게 단지의 뉴모반 디레 마사와 직자요 말이지 Dewa 중에 요는 산촉 샘치 저 산촉 식구 같은 레스 내가 돌이 타토고 Dewa 산촉 식구 같은 레스 너희 중에 요는 단지의 지금 유모바 레레에서는 라게 유모바데 남이 절 이 볼들이 학과들이 시작한 니게라서 뭐 유모바데 땅다조 난 유모 땅다조는 되게 프리마치 본 종류에 들이 지 주민들의 송송요래 대로드 세바 투담지 보동세 다 많이 가요 gebjorjo 끝자송 너 답지대 아주 프리마치 뭐 정도 취향이 제발대로 송에 또 등에 다니지야 네 저장이 상기치 뭐 요래지 등에 다니지 고래 리셉티 탐지 등에 착용하셔서 뭐람 자고래지
So when you experience all kinds of suffering, illness, or you think that someone is harming you through black magic and so on, you have to recognize that all of these are only the conditions. They're not causing your suffering. Therefore, you shouldn't get angry at them or resentful. They are only the condition, all your difficulties and illness and so on. The actual cause was created in previous lives with your own afflictive emotions. You have created karma. And now, through the experience of suffering, you are purifying this karma. And that is necessary. So however great the suffering of sentient beings may be, the suffering itself is what purifies their negative karma. The seeds for such suffering are within the mind, the afflictive emotions, and they have to become purified or exhausted. And once they become purified, then one can attain the state of enlightenment. So through one's experience of suffering and sickness and so on, this experience is like paying back a loan that you owe to someone. So for example, if there's someone who you think is casting a spell, if you are getting angry at them, then you are creating even more karma. So just think that this experience is good because I am purifying my negative karma, and it has to become purified. So it is said that all suffering is actually like a positive occurrence as it purifies our negativities and obscurations. And especially nowadays, there is a lot of suffering in the world. And who has created it? It is self-grasping and the afflictive emotions. So it is because I myself have accumulated karma, and now I'm suffering, now I'm purifying this karma. And so this actually is a good thing, because it is said that when one suffers in a precious human body, actually one purifies a great deal of negative karma. So it is like paying back a huge loan if you suffer as a precious human being. For example, if you had the karma to live in the lower realms for hundreds of years, then it is that the karma of the lower realms is purified by a single headache in a precious human body. So the precious human body is like a piece of gold. If you have a huge debt, then you can pay that back with a tiny little piece of gold. So it can pay back a huge amount of karmic debt. And for this reason, to the Bodhisattvas actually consider suffering and sickness and so on as a good quality. And for us sentient beings, we are unable to bear suffering. But even if you're not able to bear it, at least you can think that or know that even though it's hard to bear, it is still beneficial. It is still good because I am still purifying my negative karma, which is necessary. So whatever suffering it is, big or small, think that I am purifying my negative karma. And there is not a single form of suffering that has not arisen from self-grasping and the afflictive emotions. And likewise, the slightest moment of happiness arises from bodhicitta. This bodhicitta is the cause of the temporary happiness in the higher realms and the ultimate enlightenment. And even the slightest moment of suffering is rooted in self-grasping and the afflictive emotions. And so therefore we have to apply an antidote to that to eliminate suffering. And the antidote is wisdom and compassion, which purifies the afflictive emotions. And then suffering really becomes very beneficial. And Jigme Limpa had said that, so to a practitioner, those demons and harm doers are like a stepping stone or an enhancement to one's meditations, one's meditative experience. And so therefore one should not view these as something undesirable. And so for Dhamma practitioners, this is an essential point, because when you understand that, you will be able to tolerate or accept the suffering that you encounter and know that I am purifying my negative karma. It's important to think in this way. And also you should think that through my experience of suffering, I represent or I'm taking on all the suffering of all other sentient beings. So this is the sort of prayer that you should make when you suffer.
Yewa me pa shiba seven tina seven so tata seven toma seven nero tongo yore. Naga seven nero namka tava so shi ba the seven so tina ti ngani tela. Tuni tata sato seven rao flash alongore. Nyumu baga dati the nyumu baga round de napa nato shalongore. 샤와 탑제들이 라리 소되면 소마 저따라 나와서 랑그 셈데 랑그 셈이 기분 나와요 말이지 영미의 영화미 봐 맥바 메바들 강설은 되봐 맹미 영미 고면 대행소 대도 공들을 드리다 랑 나와야 봐 하고 드리 랑 나와들이 랑그 랑 나와 때 도바이 나와 도바이 나와 도바를 때도 생이 네 생이 이제 도바이 때 나와서 나와 열답게 도바이 메롱 나가 좀 이따와서 뭐요 때라들이 맹미 영미 고면 대행소데 제 세상 동안이 마행나 니지 메와 차용을 들 남지가 또 맞차들이 들 샤와든 자손도 차들이 들들 비누간 메와티 남지가 또 맞차들 미 영미 고베된도 대다답게 이거 미 영미들 고요래지 들콩도는 영화메에서 강리에 강란에 바로 something서 알로는 메에서 혼남이 영화메와 차들이 영화 메와서 진짜 신기 뭐 이거는 나도 샤용나 가야지 야잖아. 이 쳐다랍게 되리. 라샤르나데, 레샤르나데. 야, 유모바 나도 게임기 바차 탐치에들이 가리네 쳐다랍게 되라. 이 마다바들아 지네로 하고요래. 몸이 고베데를 지네 들이 함이 데비에들이 하고요래지.
So then, where does this confidence about the devas and the ghosts come from? Then second, he said, being free of focal object and distraction is my confidence in meditation. And so being free from focal object is to have no point that you fixate on. And being without distraction is to abide within the clear and empty natural state of the mind, which is like space. So you rest within the space-like nature while sustaining clear awareness. And then sustaining this nature, then the natural manifestation of bodhicitta is the appearance of the devas or the gods, the deities. And the natural manifestation of afflictive emotions and self-grasping are the various kinds of demons. In the 37 Bodhisattva Practices, it says, appearances are one's own mind. There is no other appearance separate from your own mind. Everything you perceive is your own mind. So distraction, being free from distraction and having no focal object. Having no focal object so means to not grasp at anything whatsoever. And so when one remains within that meditative state that is free from focal object and free from distraction, one then recognizes whatever arises within the mind. And whatever appearance that manifests is recognized as empty. One recognizes the empty ground of mind itself. And all outer appearances are recognized as emptiness. They are viewed like a reflection in a mirror. So Milarepa remained within this state of clarity and emptiness without distraction. And remaining within that state, there is no grasping. So everything, when there is no grasping in the mind, then all appearances naturally are empty, are experienced like a rainbow appearing in the sky. And therefore, they do not affect one in any way, in a good or bad way. They naturally become empty, all appearances. And so, so this is the actual antidote to what we mentioned before, this perception of devas and ghosts. The antidote is to be free of focal object and distraction. And this is what Milarepa had gained confidence in. Also, Milarepa said elsewhere that aside from sustaining the natural state, there is no other perfection of meditative concentration than that. So Milarepa himself sustained this state of non-distraction continuously day and night, sustained a state of clear awareness. And when that is sustained, then whatever arises within that, one just lets it be without clinging to it. And then it will go away on its own, just like a wave on water. And this is what happens when gods or devas appear, and the same happens when evil spirits or demons appear. So whatever appears, afflictive emotions or thoughts and happiness and suffering or beliefs in a true existence and so on, all of these are like these waves on water that just pass by when one has realized the nature of the mind.
Oh, semayan patili napto tabje shar doro tinya choda labje de cha dogori kap tini a saje le ya goyo mari saje sentra rang le mang hiso so tokwa go mari napto tabje nyum patje raji shar doro de de shin de chawa tabje de napto chowa sen majawa sta napto chokole jodogori ma ko min de chokole min dogo yo songri cosa mi fa adesso dirti dona main pana saje ko je lamso tele tine trita revi tomi devi denso se to deve yo te deve sempre do paese sempre to nam ka ta ve te gani na to kare che na te choa yo ga pa te merong ya si ba yin de te sem choa ma ja ta ta so ta ri te ta to deve ta ta ran saje re cái dọc sang gì xong chập chữ nó xâm bảo đi thế thì liệu có yêu mà stop ai yêu mà để đó càng yêu mà dễ thế xong.
So being free of focal objects and free of distraction, that is really the most important. That is a crucial point. Because so when the mind is clear, when you sustain clarity, clear awareness, then whatever thoughts and emotions and so on arise in the mind, you will recognize them, so you will not pursue them, and then they will not create karmic imprints. And in this way, the mind in an instant becomes purified. On the other hand, if you are distracted, then even a subtle thought that arises, you don't recognize it, so you cling to it, and then this grasping at the thought generates a feeling, and then you dwell within this feeling. And this is what creates these patterns of karmic imprints in the mind. So it is said that gradually these imprints become stronger and thicker. So later they become a very thick layer. So it is just like drops of water accumulating. A single drop or a single moment doesn't create a thick layer, but it is because we have habituated for a long time that we have this thick layer of habitual imprints. So this point of non-distraction during meditation is very important. Non-distracted meditation, that's very important. And then next it says, being free of hope and fear is my confidence in fruition. So then when you remain always in a state without distraction, whatever thoughts and afflictive emotions arise within the mind are then liberated upon arising, just like waves dissipating back into the ocean. And so at that point, it is no longer necessary to hope for Buddhahood, because that mind itself already is Buddha. And there is also no need to have any hopes, any fears to fall into the lower realms, because at this point, you have liberated all thoughts and afflictive emotions naturally upon arising. And it is said that the natural liberation of thoughts upon arising is the liberation of thoughts into the nirmana kaya. So when thoughts arise within a state of clear knowing, then these thoughts will not generate feelings. And then these thoughts are said to ripen into nirmana kaya. So in the future, the thoughts are then ripen into nirmana kaya. So this is how it is explained in the Sri Kaya Rigpa. And so also it is said that non-destruction is the path of all the Buddhas. So being free of hope and fear is my confidence in fruition. The fruition also is just the mind that is clear and empty like space. And when no thoughts generate any feeling in your mind, it is like a clear mirror, completely purified. And that mind itself is in the Manjushri, you are a Buddha. In this one moment, you are a Buddha. And therefore, from this perspective here of this confidence, here it is no longer necessary to have any hopes or fears, any hopes for attaining enlightenment or any fears of experiencing the suffering of the lower realms. So that itself is the fruition.
Di cek di yang tang de kokori tri tereng tanan sam yoge pe tembre ya kori chudo no tong tong pe gaso a tu tama rangi namna no ji sepji tangke te pama ma de wa chita yo ma ti nai te chudo si a chimbo yo re te tata thwa de te ni thong yo re o te zo de kadine ke shi yo ma re ke de kadine ko ya yo re Nitang so tamsa ti zo de zuko de zumari el ni zumari ta zukta ja se senta yore te ile ya go yo gore kadin na yore ti wa yo.
And so in brief, the most important point is the second line here, being free of focal object and distraction, and especially being free from distraction. In the 37 Bodhisattva Practices, it says, whatever you do, look at the state of your mind. What is the state of my mind? Look at it with clear awareness. What arises in my mind? What thought arises in my mind? It's enough to recognize that and then just let the thought be. And it will dissipate like a wave on water and will then not create a further karmic imprint in the mind. So that's really the most important part. So again and again, try to understand this line here about being free from focal object and distraction. So today we stop the teachings here, again at a very auspicious point. And I'm so happy to see you all, my Dharma friends. You're really my family. And generally, all sentient beings are our family. There is not a single being who has not been our parent. So I love you all very, very much. And what you see is what we see in each other today, like our forms on the screen. This is our real form, actually. This form that you see today on the screen, that is the form that is beyond birth and death. And the voice is always there. You can always hear the voice. The body that you come to hug is false. That's not who we really are. This body that you see is our real body, and the sound that you hear, and especially the mind. The mind will always be there. So we are always together, and now I'm always thinking of you, and I love you very much.
Thank you very much, Garchen Rinpoche, for your kind teachings. Dhamma brothers and sisters, Rinpoche will continue at 8 a.m. tomorrow. So we are inviting all panelists to turn on your microphone so that Rinpoche can see and also hear us. So please.
Thank you. Cảm ơn thầy.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, see you tomorrow.
Rather late in Arizona now, and Rinpoche has to take his rest back in his retreat hut. I rejoice everyone for attending the teachings today. We are having a break right now, so please do come back by 10 a.m. 10 a.m. sharp. We are starting the next session. Do come back before that. So we are not closing the Zoom room, so you don't have to exit. But before you go for the quick break, please do turn off your mic and your video. Thank you very much, and see all you Dhammas, brothers and sisters later on.